Hello, St. Patrick. How are you? I'm Father Bryan here, and I'm going to answer another question that I got from the kids. And this question I got the most often. It was came in around 7 or 8 times, and the question was, "Why are you a priest?" Or "What made you think about being a priest?" Or "When did you first start thinking about being a priest?" And so I'm going to tell you my vocation story. When I was in third grade, we went to mass in our school, and in the mornings. And I remember one particular day in third grade, our pastor was talking about Saint Stephen. And Saint Stephen, he said, was the proto martyr, or the first martyr, the first one to give his life and to die for the faith. And as soon as I heard that, sitting in the pew, my little third grade mind started working. And I started thinking, well, why is Saint Stephen considered the first martyr? Because Saint John the Baptist died and he was killed. And why isn't he a martyr? And I know he died before St. Stephen, so how come? So after Mass, while we were still in church, I went to my teacher and I'm like, why? I asked her that question. How come St. John the Baptist isn't the first martyr? And why is it St. Stephen? She goes, that's a really good question. Go ask Father. I'm like, okay. So I went off and I asked Father. I'm like, hey, Father. And I asked him the question. Why is St. Stephen the first and not John the Baptist? And he raised his finger and his eyes went down. He said, how dare you question me? And he yelled at me for a while, and I started crying. And my teacher came to my rescue, and he started yelling at her, and she started crying. And we kind of ran out of church. And I started remember thinking in that moment, man, I want to be a priest because I want to yell at people. No, not at all. In fact, at that moment, I was so terrified of priests for probably the next, over a year and a half. I was terrified of priests. I didn't want to go anywhere near them. I didn't want to. We were at Mass, and I just kept my distance. I didn't question anything, certainly, or if I had a question, I didn't say it out loud. I was terrified. So, fast forward another year and a half, we had a new associate pastor come to my home parish. His name was Father Leo. And just so happens that Father Leo was the pastor here at St. Patrick 2 pastors ago. So it was Father Leo, then Monsignor Pat, and then me. But Father Leo was a new associate at my home parish. And I was late, it was mid or late 4th grade at this time. And I remember all of a sudden, the idea of priesthood started changing for me. Because Father Leo started showing up in school and laughing with us and joking. He was out on the playground sometimes, and he would play kickball or soccer with us. And started taking groups of us to St. Louis Cardinals baseball games and to the indoor soccer, the Steamers. And all of a sudden, my idea of what priests, who they are and how they treat people completely started to change. He was nice. He was funny. He was great to be around. And he made us feel good about ourselves. And he made our faith something that was fun and easy to do and easy to live, and that we wanted to do it. I remember one particular time in 4th grade walking across the parking lot with Father Leo, and I think we were walking towards the church, and he looked down at me and he said, hey, Bryan, so what do you want to be when you grow up? And I said, I want to be a professional baseball player. He goes, well, did you ever think about being a priest? I said, no, because then again, I still had that fear of priests yelling at people, right? He goes, oh, and he put his finger on me. He goes, well, start thinking about it. I'm like, okay, right? And I was like afraid, but the funny thing happened is that I did start to think about it. He planted a seed in me to where all of a sudden the possibility of priesthood became more of a reality or something that I could consider. And I started to open up to it a little bit. For a while, I thought that I could do both. I wanted to be a priest and a professional baseball player, and I just had these images of me stepping up to the plate at Busch Stadium, and you're like, and Father Bryan Fisher steps up to the plate, and like, oh, it goes crazy, and I hit a home run, and it's all good, right? Obviously, that did not happen. I went through grade school and still thought about it. It was an option. It wasn't like saying, yes, that's definitely what I'm going to do. Went through high school, and eventually I decided when I was a senior in high school that I did not want to go to the seminary. I had visited there a few times and gone on a couple of retreats, but I just thought, right now is not the time for me. And so I went 1 year up to school in Kirksville. It was called Northeast Missouri State then. Now it's Truman State University. And when I was there, I needed that year to grow. I really did. So while I was there at school, I started getting involved in the Newman Center, which is basically the Catholic parish for the college kids. And as I was getting involved and going on a couple retreats, I remember one retreat in November called Awakenings. I was sitting out on this lawn, this grassy area, and we had some time for private prayer and journaling. And I had a journal out, and I journaled the question. I'm like, Lord, what do you want me to do with my life? I just don't know. And shortly after that, this girl, Melanie, who I had known for a couple years, but she had never known that I had ever thought about being a priest. Anyway, she walked up to me and she picked me up the ground and she gave me a big hug. And she said, Bryan, you would make such a good priest. And then she walked away. And I'm like, and I remember just looking up in the sky. I'm like, really, Lord? Like, I asked for a sign and you give me that? And because I don't think I was wanting to hear that yet. I was denying it or just not allowing myself to believe that. And then fast forward another couple months, friends of mine, a few girls, they're like, hey, we're going on a road trip. There's this prayer and music conference. You want to come? I'm like, road trip, I'm in. So we all packed up. We went to this conference. And I remember they were all in a separate room. We stayed in these parishioners. They let us stay in their house. We didn't know who they were, but they were really nice. I had my own little room because I was the only guy, and all the girls were in another room. And I remember just kind of praying that night before going to bed. And I'm like, Lord, just show me what you want me to do. What do you want me to do with my life? What did you make me for? And we fell asleep. And next morning we woke up, went to the conference. I remember sitting in the church. And I'm sitting at the end of the pew. And all the other people I knew were on this side of me. But I'm at the edge on the main aisle. And I feel someone punch me in my arm. And I'm like, huh. And I don't know why I did this. But instead of looking to see who punched me, I looked down the line of who I was there with. I'm like, those are the only people I know in Columbus, Ohio. So who's punching me? And I looked up, and there was Monsignor Bill Lyons. He worked at the time at Kenrick Glennon Seminary. And he was the only priest in my high school years that I really talked about the possibility of priesthood to. And he just showed up in Columbus, Ohio. And he goes, hello. And he just walked on because he was a little strange, but he was awesome, but strange. And later we talked about it. Later when we had an open time for just kind of free time, I remember talking to him about it. And again, the Lord was just kind of beating me up in a beautiful way, preparing me to receive what he wanted me to do. Then that same freshman year when I was in Kirksville, came home for Easter break. And I remember I got involved. I was up at my parish a lot, and we had a seminarian there living at the time, and he had me involved in helping decorate the church and doing things. He had me prepare and sing part of the Exultet, which is the beautiful first song that's sung at the Easter Vigil, and he had me sing that. It was the first time I ever did that in my life, and I remember Holy Saturday morning, he took me to Taco Bell, because it was a classy place. And we sat there, and he says, why are you not in the seminary? And I said, I'm doing all these other things. At the time, I thought I wanted to be a psychologist. And I thought that's what I needed to do. And I'm going to try all of that first. And if that doesn't work out, I'll enter the seminary. He goes, oh, okay. So you're going to do all of those other things first and put God last. And eventually you might respond to him. I'm like, no, that's not what I mean. He goes, sounds like it to me. Anyway, for the next 3 hours, sitting in that Taco Bell, he took every one of my arguments, everything that I could put out there that I was using as a wall or a barrier to answer the call of Jesus, and he just lovingly destroyed them. Like, I remember just feeling kind of worn out and like, I can't believe, like I had no arguments left. It was just, I was laid bare. And we had the Easter Vigil that night, and I remember that Easter morning, waking up my freshman year of college, and I woke up and I'm like, I have to enter the seminary. There's no question anymore. That's just what I have to do. And so I was so excited all of a sudden to make that decision. And once the barriers were gone and I could make it, I'm going to be honest, I never felt so free in all my life. Just to say, Lord, I'm going to do this, and I'm giving myself completely to you and for your people. And so I went and I entered the seminary. I remember Easter Monday morning. It's really hard to find priests on Easter Monday morning after Holy Week because Holy Week is pretty tough and we all kind of scatter. We take the time off. Well, I was at the seminary beating on the windows like, let me in, give me an application. And I was trying to kind of get there, but there was no one home. So I had to go back to Kirksville eventually. The priest got a hold of me, the vocation director, and I started the process, and I entered that summer into the seminary. And after 8 years in the seminary, 3 more years of college, 5 years of theology, I was ordained a priest in May 24th, 2003. And it's been just an amazing and grace-filled journey of being with God's people and in my also just growing in my relationship with Jesus, as he is the foundation of everything that I am and do. At least I try to make that the case. I fail at times, yes, but that's why we have the beauty of confession, right? And the Lord is always welcoming us and calling us. So question for you, wherever you are, whether you are in a vocation, you're married, or you're dedicated single life, or maybe you are still in school and you don't know what God might be calling you to. I just ask you to be open. Be open to whatever it is that Jesus is calling you to. And it's a simple prayer. Jesus, help me to realize, help me to courageously respond to your call, whatever that may be. Help me to be open to live the gifts that you've placed within me so that I can live for you. Whether that is in marriage, whether that is in religious life as a sister or a brother, whether that is in the priesthood. I pray that you might be open to what the Lord calls. He's calling. I know that. He's calling some of our young men to the priesthood. He's calling some of our young women to the religious life and to be a sister for the church. And he's calling many of you to the beautiful vocation of marriage. But we have to be open and not let it be our plan, but instead, Lord, let it be your plan. It's kind of Jesus's prayer in the Garden of Gethsemane. He says, Father, as he says, if it be your will, let this pass from me, because I was afraid to be a priest. I was afraid to say yes to that call. But I had to get to that point of surrender. Lord, not what I want, but what you want. I'm giving myself to you. And that's what the Lord asks of each of us. And when we do that, we will never experience the type of peace and freedom that only he can give. It's a joy. It's a joy for me, too, to be here with you at St. Patrick. There's no place I'd rather be. There's no people I'd rather to be with. And thank you for allowing me to walk with you on your own journeys. And thank you for being a part of mine. May God bless and keep you in the beauty of this octave of Easter and this Easter season. Amen. Alleluia.